A shocking result then for Manchester United, losing 3-0 at home. And interesting stuff from Ten Hag afterwards. This is what the Manchester United coach had to say. I think as a squad we are not good enough to be consistent, and we have to work as a squad to improve that. As a group we have to improve, we have to get tougher, but be ready for the game from the start. I said it can't be in this league if you're not playing on the highest levels because you get killed. Rob Dawson was at the game for us at Old Trafford. We're hearing from Rob in a moment. It's his squad. They've spent lots of money on it, yet he's saying they're not good enough to be consistent.
It's his squad. They had an element of consistency last year as the season wore on after a very difficult start that was well documented. He's had the summer to work with them. And we're talking about Bournemouth here. Yes, Bournemouth, who had a slow start to the season under the new manager, have picked up better recently. They're playing better, but they're away from home. They're at Old Trafford. You've just come off the back of arguably your best performance of the season against Chelsea, which was a really open game, but United did create a lot of chances and should have won the game by more. And yet you go into this game and you look as fragile as they did. Look, they actually come out in the first 15 minutes, United that is, and played some good stuff. But as soon as you punch this team in the nose, they all run for cover. And I think that's a big problem for them. And, you know, Solanke, who was excellent, hit the post in the first half.
Yep.
He had the goal chopped off at the end. It almost made it 4-0 when it bounced off the lad's arm accidentally. And Rob and I were talking about this earlier today. I, for one, the first thing that stuck out to me when I flicked up the team sheet was the striker. I just couldn't... And not for 1 second suggesting they lost to Bournemouth because of Anthony Martial. But I honestly didn't think, bar desperation, we would see him near the starting 11 again. And I don't think they were desperate today because they had Højlund and others on the bench. And that was a shocker to me in terms of, you know, I thought him and Rashford, certainly for the foreseeable future, were going to pat their backsides on the bench, and other people were going to take up the mantle of pushing United forward. But that's only a small facet of the story. The big one was they were all over the place.
Yeah, Rob, we've seen a lot of lows at Old Trafford. Are this amongst the lowest of them?
Certainly this season. You know, it's been a really poor start to the season. You know, you flashed up a graphic there. It's the 11th defeat already in 23 games. And this is probably among the worst of those. You know, most of the losses at the early start of the season were quite narrow. You know, a team would score and then United would attack them for a bit, and they didn't have that cutting edge to find an equaliser or a winner. But today they were well beaten. You know, they lost 3-0, but it quite could have easily been 5 or 6. They were that bad, and it is a little bit of a surprise because, you know, they played so well in parts against Chelsea on Wednesday. There was this kind of hope that maybe that would be a platform to build on something. Obviously, they've got a massive week coming up with Bayern Munich and Liverpool. But instead of heading into those two games with some kind of momentum, it's almost like we're back at square one. You know, you have to forget that game against Chelsea already because they were so woeful today that fans were streaming out of Old Trafford after about 70 minutes thinking, how is this going to get any worse? Well, unfortunately, you've got Bayern Munich to come in the Champions League on Tuesday, and then a horrible trip to Anfield, the Premier League leaders, Liverpool, next weekend.
And Rob, just take us through the atmosphere at Old Trafford as the game went on. Yeah,
I mean, they started poorly. You know, Ten Hag said in his press conference that he wasn't happy with the way his team started at all. You know, there was an instant after about 30 seconds where Solanke almost nicks in and gets a goal. They take the lead after 5 minutes. And Craig is right. You know, the fans know that if this team have a setback very early on, that they really struggle to rebuild from there. And so a lot of fans will have been expecting what happened after the first goal goes in. The second half, after half-time, they start okay, but again, the goal goes in quite early in the second half. And again, fans know that they're not going to react very well. And once the third goal goes in, half of Old Trafford was empty. And by the time the final whistle was blown, there was hardly any fans left there to boo. You know, it was that bad. Ten Hag stood on the touchline for a bit in the pouring rain, just staring at his players, almost like that he had run out of ideas. And lots of fans are worried about that now, that a manager who they thought had taken the team on a step forward last season, you know, finishing third and getting to 2 cup finals, is now looking like a guy who is really, really running out of ideas. And, you know, it's not just the start of the season now. We're well into the season. We're almost halfway through the season. And we're still running into these same problems. United are still losing these games in the same way.
It's the manner of the defeat today, isn't it, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, they're just a mess. They really are. I'm like Craig, when I saw Martial right off the bat, I'm like, what? This is a guy that should be nowhere near Manchester United. But it's not just there. You look at the back line. I mean, Harry Maguire and Shaw as your centre-backs, when you've got Varane on the bench. I mean, what has gone on behind the scenes that Varane can't get a game ahead of Harry Maguire, who can't run anymore? The guy can't turn. He can pass a ball, but he can't do anything else. And then you put Shaw next to him. I mean, it's an absolute shambles. I mean, you just look at them. I mean, Garnacho has talent, but he's a guy for the future.
Right.
You shouldn't be relying on this kid. This kid plays, I think he plays his age. You know, too many times he tries to cross balls when it's not on, and he does things that aren't on, but he still keeps trying them. That's what a young, inexperienced player does. But yet, Ten Hag is relying on him to try and get United out of the mess that they're in. It's never going to happen. I mean, what chance you got? You've got Anthony on one side, who, if he behaves himself, we think he's doing well. I've just told you about Garnacho on the other side. You've got a guy up front who shouldn't be playing in the Premier League, and you've got two centre-backs who shouldn't be playing centre-back. I mean, what kind of chance have you got of doing anything when you're in that sort of situation?
Johnny Evans was playing ahead of Rafael Varane, a World Cup winner.
What's going on?
Champions League winner. And I get it. You know, in one sense, what we're seeing here is a manager who is hell-bent on getting a left-footer at left-sided centre-back. That's what he wants. He wanted Lisandro Martinez in there, who did a decent job for him, can come out with a left foot, but he's injured. Now he wants Luke Shaw when he hasn't got anybody else to do that. And Rafael Varane, for all his success in the game, is not the best passer of the football. But he's a defender, and United are not keeping the other teams out. And Dominic Solanke had a field day. I mean, this lad did a great job for Bournemouth up front today. You know, he's been around. You know, he was at Liverpool. He's got a talent. But he's big, strong, physical, and he's quite quick. And the two centre halves just struggled with him, and he gave Bournemouth. He gave Bournemouth an outlet. But look, if I was Rafael Varane, he must just be going home to the family and say, I'm picking my wages up. When my contract finishes at United, I'm going to retire. Because if I can't get a game here, then I'm never going to play. But I just don't know where United go. I think we all saw some green shoots in the Chelsea game and thought, oh, God, wasn't that good to see? What rate, tempo, creating chances.
It's more of an indictment now on Chelsea.
But that doesn't what he said after the game make a mockery of what he's talking about? Yeah. Because they played one decent game and we were sitting here going, now we know what they're capable of. Because even though they had won games, they hadn't played any football at all. So again, what is he talking about? I mean, they're not... If anything, they are consistently bad. Yeah. Because the fact that they played well against Chelsea, we were like, oh my goodness, where did this come from? I mean, it's just a mess.
And Rob, you've got him saying this squad isn't good enough to be consistently good. He chose a lot of these members of the squad.
Exactly that. And Craig is right. At the top of the show, he said that they were consistent enough last season to finish third in the Premier League and to reach 2 cup finals. You don't do that unless you can string runs of wins together. Since that, he spent money in the summer. He spent almost 400 million on new players since he arrived as manager. So to point at your squad and say that these guys aren't good enough to be consistent really is an indictment on the manager himself. You know, again, we're not talking about a manager who has been in the job 2 or 3 months and he's saying, I need time to develop this team and this squad. We're nearing 18 months with Ten Hag in charge. So if this squad or this team isn't good enough to be consistent, then surely that is down to him. You know, he's the guy that is in that job to make that team consistent, to make that team capable of putting big, long winning runs together, to get them in the top 4, to get them, you know, supposedly to challenge for the title. And if he's saying that he can't do that, you know, then maybe that he's not the right guy for the job. We're probably not at that stage yet where he's really, really in danger of losing his job. But when he comes out and says things like this, you'll get fans watching that and scratching their heads and saying, well, if it's not your fault, then whose fault is it?
What if they get whooped by Bayern and then by Liverpool? Anything possible could then change, Rob?
Well, it would be a disaster for Ten Hag. The problem he's got is that you've got a guy, Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's going to come in as a minority shareholder imminently and take over the football side of the business. So there's a question mark over right now. Is there anyone at United who has the appetite to sack Ten Hag? I imagine the answer to that is no. That the feeling around Old Trafford will be that we let Jim Ratcliffe come in, he does his audit of the staff, and then when the time comes, he makes a decision on Ten Hag and who should be manager. At the moment, I doubt that the Glazers want to make that choice. Again, though, if they were to lose heavily to Bayern on Tuesday and get knocked out of the Champions League and get knocked out of Europe altogether, and then go to Anfield on Sunday and get beat heavily, we saw that they got beat there 7-0 last season. So that happens again, then what do you do? At that point then, the feeling of the fans would be so high that maybe that you would be forced into a decision and forced into getting rid of the manager. But at the moment, the feeling is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to come in at some stage and make that decision for himself. He's not in yet. And it may take a week or two for him to get his feet under the table and do an audit and to make that decision. So right now, there isn't really anyone there who wants to make that choice.
And let's not forget, even in victory, I mean, we're not today, but they've lost 3 today, could have been 4 or 5. The Chelsea game was super exciting, but, you know, United created the better chances, there's no doubt about it, but Chelsea created chances, could have had themselves some goals. Everton, in that victory for United with a great Garnacho goal, created chances. Newcastle, so it worries me what's going to happen to them. Not so much the Bayern Munich game, because Bayern Munich have qualified already, who knows, and they've been hammered today by Eintracht Frankfurt. It's more the Liverpool game.
A Liverpool game, of course, where they won't have their captain. And as much as we focus on Ten Hag and all the problems he's got to deal with, it doesn't help, does it?
No,
when your players do things like this?
Absolutely. And look, we all get a bit carried away sometimes and gobby to referees. But he knows. And if you've been a cynic about this, you'd say, he knows he's getting booked. He doesn't fancy playing at Anfield next week. Or if you're analysing it properly, which I think I'm in the second camp of, he's just a big mouth. He just can't help himself moaning and whining, particularly when it's not going his way. He went to ground so easy in this game when Bournemouth players were tackling him, particularly in the second half. And he moaned and he moaned and he whined and he got his yellow card. And he knows and he knew that the position was that he... Now, if he gets it for trying to stop an attack and he makes a tackle, listen, that's not a problem. But he's now, you know... He's the captain, he's their most talented player. If they are going to create something at Anfield, it's probably going to come from him. He's supposed to be the leader. And quite frankly, I think his attitude towards trying to help his manager, knowing the situation ahead with all these tough games, is disgraceful, really. I mean, as a captain of the football club, to get booked and continue to get booked in such a manner for the descent and now going to miss this big game next week.
Does disgraceful sum it up for you, Rob?
Yeah. You know, Fernandez's behaviour at the end of the game is stupidity. He should know better. He's captain of Man United. He should know better. I thought the performance in general was unforgivable. You know, there are obviously tactical issues at United. You know, you could talk about the midfield being non-existent and the issues at centre-half and the problems they have scoring goals. The biggest concern for me was that this was meant to be a week where this team was showing that they were fighting for each other and fighting for the manager. And in the first half in particular, they didn't win a 50-50 anywhere, all over the pitch. They were second best all over the pitch. You know, Ten Hag, after the game, talked about we need to be tougher. They were out-battled and out-fought by Bournemouth, who just wanted to win the game more than Man United. And of all the things we've spoken about the performance, that is the biggest worry for me. If you've got a Bournemouth team who are turning up at Old Trafford who want to win more than Man United at a time when everyone's meant to be showing how much they care for the club and fighting for the players and fighting for the manager, that is a massive, massive concern. And I don't know what happens now. You know, if they were to go and get beat by Bayern heavily, get beat by Liverpool heavily, then what? You have to start looking at making major changes. And we've just said then, I'm not sure there's anyone there to make that change. So what we're going to do, we could be here next weekend talking about exactly the same problems. Yeah. Exactly the same problems have caused United to get beat 5-0 at Anfield. And then it carries on and it carries on. It has to stop somewhere.
I think the first goal, going back to what Rob was saying, I think the first goal, the Bournemouth first goal was the epitome of that. The way that Cook picked up the scraps ahead of McTominay, who was on the back foot, gets a great first touch, gets in there, wins the second ball, goes by Amrabat like he's not there. Reguilon doesn't even make a challenge, and before we know it, he's whipping the ball across, and it was a great finish, by the way, from Solanke, a really, really good finish. But he's basically he had the desire and the guts to get on that, and nobody even got close to making the tackle, and I think that about summed him up today. I really, to be honest, didn't see this coming, not off the back of midweek. I thought United had finally got a bit of, were galvanised, we're going to take Bournemouth apart, but I am shocked how much they struggled in this game today.
Rob, just a couple of things. Marcus Rashford, what sort of reception did he get when he came on?
Yeah, not bad. I mean, he ran around a bit, but it looked like a guy who... But it looked like a guy who knew that he'd been caught out at Newcastle. It looked like a guy who knew that he'd underperformed and been caught not trying at Newcastle, coming on and showing or trying to show people that he had that desire. And to be honest, it looked a little bit desperate. And that's where they're at the moment. If you get a United player who's running around a bit, you get a clap because not everyone else is doing it. And that sounds ridiculous. And I know why you're laughing in the studio, but that's where they're at right now. Not every player is doing that.
That really smells of they're all playing for themselves now. There's nothing about what's going on at United that says that they're playing for the manager.
So here's the problem then. If you get rid of the manager, who comes in? Because it's a bit of a poison chalice at the moment, that United job, isn't it?
The problem is most normal clubs, there's an atmosphere and a smell when players are not playing for the manager.
Right.
And in a normal club, somebody will make a decision that this can't continue, because then what happens is you get embarrassed all the time.
Right.
But you get the feeling that what Rob was talking about, it's like, you know what, let's just wait and then this guy can do it. Because none of us really want to do it, because we know it's going to cost us money to get rid of him if we get rid of him, and then we'll just...
But
we'll just let it go.
Say they do make the decision. Who could come in? Who is going to make that change?
De Zerbi.
De Zerbi's going to... You think so?
No, I'm having a go at you there. Look, I don't think there's any doubt there would be a line of respected managers wanting the Manchester United job. As we had this argument before, coaches will think they can come in. They know that there'll be money made available. They can see that the names on the back of the jerseys, they have got talent. So I don't think the problem is getting somebody to come in.
Right.
The problem is going to be, how do you change the squad in a short space of time? Because that's what really needs. Listen, Pep Guardiola could cross the road from Man City and come in. But with these players, it doesn't seem like they're capable. I don't think this is about
but could we
just the
say
manager.
that about Spurs last season and then look at the difference that Postecoglou has made?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a stretch, isn't it?
I don't know. Not necessarily. I think.
I mean, what Postecoglou has done is can you remember anybody else doing that? I mean, it's kind of a one-off. To think that somebody else is just going to come into United and turn this mob into the attitude that Spurs have got, I think is stretching it.
I think the Ineos investment is going to be a key here, because I think as long as the Glazers are not involved in any talks about football people coming in, because quite frankly they stink at it and their people have stunk at it, I think then there's a shining light for a potential new manager if that's the way they go, if Ten Hag doesn't survive. But this stench at this football club has started a long time ago, and it started upstairs, right? It started upstairs with poor decision after poor decision, with poor recruitment after poor recruitment, and throwing money down the drain, overspending on players, and allowing things to fester behind the scenes at training grounds and all these problems. And Ten Hag is not blameless. And when you take a job, the buck stops with you. And he's making some strange decisions, and he's saying some very strange things. But this is just festering away because it started upstairs years ago, and it's going to take this new investment, it's going to take new people coming into this club, and it's going to take another long road again by the looks of it to get this right. And I don't think we would have been saying that 7 or 8 months ago. It looked like it was on the right track to an extent, but it has very much come off it.